What's up, guys? It's Lord Botha here with another video, and we have to address something that some of you might find fairly controversial. Now, I know a lot of you that have subscribed to my channel are members of the Fellowship. You're fans of GNG, Nerd Wars, other places that I too am a fan of and a supporter of their communities. You'll often see me in the chat there talking with you guys and all that. But the thing that's important to me above all else is truth, pure objective truth. And because of that, there is an element within those communities that doesn't seem to be clearly on the up and up. This person is well trusted, been on several live streams of many of those channels, coincidentally the larger channels that get, hundreds, thousands of views, right? This person says all the correct things in terms of their political views, their sociological views, and their views on how politics and sociology have affected gaming in terms of wokeness, DEI, etc. However, recent investigations into this person have raised some pretty legitimate questions about their honesty. The person we're talking about here is one Mark Kern, also known as Grummz. Now, I know again, this is controversial to probably a lot of you, but a significant amount of evidence is being compiled that Grummz is not necessarily as clean of a person as it's been presented on live streams and all that. Now, the evidence being presented and compiled has been done by one McDizzle Gaming. Now, McDizzle Gaming, in his bio here on Twitter, describes himself as a Canadian YouTube partner, love all things gaming, kind of like wrestling, Star Wars, and other things. And this whole controversy revolves around the creation of this demo for this game Ember, which has taken 8 years to develop, and hundreds of thousands of dollars have been donated to a game that has not come to fruition, and a demo that doesn't seem to be up to par to what was promised. Essentially, McDizzle exposes that there are a lot of financial irregularities involving the money that has been put into the development of Ember, supposedly, and the actual development of the game as it's gone along. Now, it's pretty apparent, and McDizzle admits it in his video, that he does not share the same socio-political beliefs as one Mark Kern. McDizzle, who was on a live stream with Gronking Odd Dogs, answered a question from me via Super Chat, in which I asked him if he thinks any social or political beliefs were the reason for his investigation into Grummz, or could lead to any bias in his investigation. And while he denies that these were the only motives for this, he does acknowledge that they were slight motivators. However, he believes that these differences of opinions, both sociologically and politically, don't render him biased enough that he would deny the actual facts presented. And he challenged anyone who has alternative facts that could negate his opinions to come up and present them, which I believe to be a fair point. It's also a knee-jerk reaction when you go through McDizzle's Twitter to notice that he's quite a fan of Star Wars Outlaws. Now, I know in the macro sense, what does that matter? Well, here's how it matters. This obviously is deep within the realms of gaming, right? So mostly it's going to be gamers interested in the topic of this. Gamers, of course, who tend to support GNG, side-scrollers, Hypnotic, all that, tend to be of certain political and sociological beliefs when it comes to gaming and ideas of wokeness in gaming, DEI in gaming, and Sweet Baby Inc. is known to be involved with Star Wars Outlaws, which obviously puts the DEI wokeness stink onto the game. The game, however, beyond that is kind of a terrible game. We've seen the enormous amounts of bugs and terrible AI that exists within the game. So the game being bad is beyond the idea of wokeness and DEI. But as you can see, it's easy to form a snap judgment that, hey, this guy, he's really big into Outlaws. Outlaws is objectively a bad game, and it has wokeness and DEI in it. So this guy, he supports Outlaws so vehemently, he must be a wokey. He must be a left-wing guy who just wants to discredit Grummz and silence his voice. And honestly, that was my knee-jerk reaction too. But then I actually watched his video, I heard him out, I followed the evidence. And the evidence led me to the conclusion that Grummz is either grossly incompetent when it came to the development of his game, which I don't think Mark Kern is grossly incompetent, or he is intentionally being deceptive to make money and deliver the least amount of required product possible to extend the amount of money that he can earn from supporters, or create a veneer of a game that will never actually come to fruition so he can grift money out of his supporters, or some combination of both. And that is a scenario that is not good. Obviously, it's bad for PR to be attached to this guy, but let's be honest. If you're worried about exposing this guy or asking questions about this guy to the larger streamers that you support, I'd like to remind you that Tim Pool had Jack Murphy as a regular on his show. He also was close to Eliza Blue on his show and had her on several times. Hell, even Elon Musk was taken in by Eliza Blue and was communicating with her. And both of those people turned out to be huge scam artists that were lying to their supporters. And yet, Elon is still the richest man in the world. Tim Pool is more successful than ever, despite the fact that apparently he's a Russian asset now. But I'm sure if I got anywhere close to the numbers that he pulls, people would be calling me a Russian asset too. Now, what's interesting to me also is psychology. One of the big reasons I've always been a fan of RPGs is that I get to notice how different characters interact with each other and what outcomes arise from doing certain things to certain people. It fascinates me. And I find that oftentimes if you look at conversations between people, you get to learn a lot more about them and their at-ease conversations with people, or when they're very angry, than you do in professional talking spaces. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at this. Now, Grummz recently posted this on Twitter on September 3rd. He states, "So recently a certain anonymous Twitter user, YouTuber, has been spreading a lot of misinformation about me. I want to see if they will stand by their words. Let's be adults. I'm not anonymous, and you have posted my own personal information around. Fair is fair, so send me your real name and address, and I'll put it on file with my lawyers. Then let's talk. If you stand by your statements, you should have no problem doing this, and we can work it out or agree to disagree." Now, there's a few questions I could raise here. The first is that Grummz claims to be doxxed, but it's well known that Grummz was never actually doxxed. Grummz put his private address on a public website and listed it as his business address. When people who did not like him found that and posted it, they were posting public information that he had made public. That's not how doxing works. If he did not want his address to be known, he shouldn't have put it on a public site in the first place. I don't know if his name, Mark Kern, was released or not against his will, but he seems completely okay with going by it, and it's well known within the industry that he worked at Blizzard. The second problem I have with this statement is the fair is fair, so send me your real name and address and I'll put it on file with my lawyers. First of all, put it on file with my lawyers. This is a threat of legal suit. It's veiled, but it's pretty much there. And he wants him to send his real name and address to him. Why do you need McDizzle's real name and address? Again, he didn't dox you. Even if other people doxed you, I've seen no evidence that McDizzle Gaming was part of any doxing effort of you. So why do you need his real name and address? Unless you're going to lord it over him to try to get him to not say things you don't like. Or if he does say something you don't like, you're going to dox him. Which, if so, that's a really shitty thing to do. And then he essentially says, unless you want to do that, unless you want to give me the information I could use to dox you, we're not talking. McDizzle then responds, "Oh, hi Grummz, happy to give you the opportunity to defend yourself against these allegations. Let's chat and make it transparent so everyone can hear your answers to this litany of things. I will update anything you prove to be incorrect in my next video. Grummz then responds, sounding a bit like the old guy who sends the girl a picture of his wiener and she won't respond to him. He says, send real name, address, then you and I talk. McDizzle responds, why do you need my name and address to talk? I can call you Grummz and you can call me McDizzle, which he has a point. If you don't like being called by your name, Mark Kern, online because you think it helps spread hate to you because people find your real name and they do terrible things to you or call you terrible things in your private emails or some shit like that, then we can just use our handles. Grummz then maturely responds, because I use my real name and you are a pussy apparently. McDizzle then responds, okay, you calling Hypnotic a pussy for not using his real name? That's cold, I thought you were bros. And Grummz again maturely responds, pussy. Hypnotic, of course, a well-known VTuber, the vast majority of his content relying on being anti-woke, anti-DEI. I've seen Hypnotic streams. He's not a streamer I watch a lot of. He's a very entertaining guy. His battle of the waifus content is, of course, legendary in the space. It's a masterful grift, and I actually applaud him for it. I'm angry I didn't come up with it myself. But he and Grummz have a close relationship, right? Grummz has been on his streams before, and it's true that Hypnotic doesn't share his face or name. And to be fair, when McDizzle did come on to the Gronking on Dog stream, he showed his face, which was more than Hypnotic has done. But if Hypnotic wants to remain anonymous, that's his own prerogative, and that's fine. He doesn't have to give his real name or face or whatever. But it's weird that his friend isn't demanding his real name and address be sent to him to have contact with him. Will Grummz start doing that to Hypnotic if they start having differences of opinion? Also, again, I'm into the psychology, right? As soon as Grummz was pressed by McDizzle, his response was to demand information that he could potentially use over McDizzle to blackmail him in some way. And that's essentially what we're talking about here, is blackmail. Not in the financial sense, but the idea that you can blackmail somebody with doxing them. When McDizzle doesn't capitulate to this, Grummz essentially resorts to name calling, which doesn't really point to somebody who feels like they're in the social moral right. The point of this is that none of this looks good for Grummz. He's fighting with this guy McDizzle, who, to be honest, does have a ton of evidence against him. Grummz says, I've explained all this away already, it doesn't mean anything. And if he has, all he has to do is say, go watch my old vids on it. I've already explained all that. And he just doesn't have to respond to this guy at all. But he continued to respond to McDizzle. And his responses were not intellectually driven. They were emotionally driven. And Grummz, of all people, should know, studying the woke DEI crowd, who rely mostly on their emotions to respond to things around them, and they're emotionally driven people and content creators and developers, that emotion is what you respond with when you don't have a lot of facts to actually fight back against accusations. It's especially a bad look to respond emotionally when you've already demanded questionable information from somebody before you even have an intellectual discussion with them. It's also weird that he didn't take the obvious path out of this as well, which is to just accuse McDizzle of being a left-wing grifter who wants to make money off of Mark Kern / Grummz's name and having a beef with him. I feel like that would have been the easy, obvious way out of this for him. But no, he took the emotional response, which has pretty strong sway over me that there's more fire when it comes to the smoke with Grummz. And again, I encourage you to go watch the video on McDizzle's Twitter. Look for yourself and make your own opinions about the accusations with the evidence that is presented. Now again, in regards to this video, it's not politically charged, it's not socially charged, and it's not based in any beef I have with Mark Kern or Grummz. I don't know the guy that well. I know of him. I know that he's been on these larger streamers that I follow streams. He's a very strong anti-woke, anti-DEI guy, which I of course support. But again, it's about truth and about honesty. And all I'm trying to do is ask the questions and follow the answers till I arrive at the truth. And I feel like there's a lot more questions that need to be asked of Grummz by people that are a lot larger than me, that could actually elicit answers from him, legitimate answers, or expose him as the fraud that he is, if he is a fraud. And again, that can only really be done by people that are close to him, larger streamers. So if you see the video and you have more questions that you want answered, I would start asking streamers that you follow to start asking questions of Grummz. And I don't mean to be rude about it or demanding or anything like that, but if you have more questions, I would recommend that you just occasionally bring it up, especially when Grummz is on the stream, and just maybe send a super chat in and say like, hey, these accusations are being made about you, do you have any comment? Because hopefully the larger streamer that they're on will actually ask them some fairly hard-hitting questions and not just talk about it in passing. Because you'll see a lot of times that's what they do, is that whenever you ask a question about it, it seems that they kind of just brush it off. And a lot of times that has to do with the nature of the show. Once you're into the super chat portion of the show, because these shows are ran by good people, they want to get through most, if not all, the super chats. So they got to kind of keep it moving. But that's really the only way you might be able to affect questions on this. That and going into social media like this and just asking questions repeatedly. Again, of course, don't be abusive, don't be spamming, anything like that. Just ask the question occasionally. I will be dropping the link to McDizzle Gaming's Twitter so you guys can check out the video. And again, I recommend that you guys take a look at it, make the judgment on your own, what you believe, what you don't believe, because again, this is all about just asking questions, trying to figure out the truth. If you liked this video, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.